My headset.
Welcome to LOA Today. Walt and Art Dry Drew here on this Thursday, December the 20th, 2018. It's 4 p.m. New York time, 1 p.m. Los Angeles time, 9 p.m. in London, and in Sydney, Australia, 8 a.m. Good morning, Sydney. And thank you for wherever you are in the world tuning in at this time. If you are joining us for the live stream, we're doing it a little bit differently for this show today. We are live streaming to our LOA Today page on Facebook. And then we're also taking that stream and we're sending it, as usual, to the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group on Facebook. So we're double streaming today, Drew, and we're doing a little experiment to see how that's going to work out. So,
all right.
Yeah. So how you been? You been having a good week?
Yeah. Actually, finally had something click that I think we talked about before, where you hear advice and it makes sense, but it really has to click, you know?
Okay. Well,
and the one that was reframing questions, so rather than like why is my life not going this way?
Yeah.
Why is this and that? I'm very good at finding out the whys, but the whys don't help you. It's just like digging in this pit, and like you already know that the pit is full of garbage. You keep digging in different areas.
This is true. This is very true. Yeah.
So. My dad was like, I think it was Tony Robbins was where he got it from. And my dad's like, yeah, you gotta ask, like, how can I go to bed earlier? So I started going to bed earlier. I've been going to bed closer to 12 as compared to like 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
And stretching at night. So I'm like, how can I fit stretching in? And how can I look towards yoga? And how can I do this and that? And it's been it's only been a couple of days, but I've been pretty much inspired each day, and it like finally makes sense.
Very good. So, well, that's progress. That's really good progress.
Yeah, that was it felt like I've been, so there's, I imagine like the abyss and then mountains. And I was like transcending this mountain for like, a couple of years, and I finally like reached the top the other day.
Very
that
good.
Mountain, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And then like you look, and there's just an even bigger mountain way far away, and there's just a whole other abyss. But I'm like, I'm ready now. Like I made it on the first mountain, so now I'm ready to head towards the second one, and go back into this abyss, and then end up, and then I'm sure there'll be just a whole series of transcending mountains.
Good for you. That's good. Excellent. Well, that any kind of progress is good, but it sounds like first of all, what you described fits what Abraham teaches, right? Because Abraham teaches us, the way they say it is, you'll never get it done and you can't get it wrong, or they actually reverse it. You can't get it wrong and you'll never get it done. I like to make it a little more positive by saying, you always get it right and the road goes on forever. Well, you just discovered you got to the top of the mountain. You discovered the road going on forever. So that's a good thing. You saw how it actually plays out. Yeah.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Very good. All right. Well, this is a Q&A in addition to our topic. Now, the topic is young adults and their approach to law of attraction and how young adults can use law of attraction in their lives. It came out of what you and I talked about last week. And I honestly, I've been trying to remember exactly how we came up with the title, and I can't quite remember it. Maybe you do. But I know in general... I mean, in general, it was about it was really about your own journey, and we figured, well, let's just kind of spread it out to what's happening with other people in roughly your same age group. But it's about what's going on in your life.
Yes. Well, however we begin that's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of hopping around from idea to idea.
Mm-hmm.
Where would you like to begin?
Well, actually, I was going to ask you that question, but that's all right. No problem.
Well, I'd say, so for people so I'm 22. I'm a male, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never really been like the angry type. Like I very rarely get angry. Like I can count the number of times a year that I get angry.
Okay.
On one hand.
Okay.
But angsty, I feel angsty a lot.
Mm.
And that was kind of, I think I've always kind of felt angsty, mostly because my personality type has always been kind of super introverted and keep to myself a lot. And so I've had to train, like, if you asked me when I was a teenager, even if I was like 17 or 18, probably, if I'd be doing like a podcast and like the other day, I went and did a presentation at a school and talked to a bunch of students about college and stuff. Like none of that I would have ever been doing when I was young. I would have been like, what? Like talking to people and doing all that. And so I guess one of the first things for younger people is like you really have no idea what your future is going to be. But it's such a lame thing to hear from someone where they're like, yeah, guess what? Like your whole life, it's going to be completely different in a couple of years and you have no idea. I'm assuming it's going to keep going like that. Like I don't know where I'm going to be even in a couple months from now. Or my friend's like, hey, you want to go to this concert? And I'm like, dude, I don't even know. Like I might not even be in this country in a few months. I have no idea where I'm going to go. So the law of attraction can be kind of tough to fit it in when you're young, and it doesn't always make sense because everything. I mean, at least like where I've grown up, it's not like a poor area, but it's not rich, and so a lot of my friends they were pretty poor growing up. I was okay, and a lot of my friends were okay, but there were a lot that weren't, and so it's hard to kind of convey something like the law of attraction to someone who they've only had one parent most of their life. That they lived in motels or in apartments, and it's hard for them to get work, and they're just disadvantage after disadvantage. And and even for me, where I didn't have that, it was a challenge to kind of see that optimistic, positive side. Mm-hmm. But it's one of those things where it does, when it finally clicks, it's kind of something you have to experience.
Yeah.
But having like people like you doing shows like this or whatever, having like support systems, all that kind of stuff is where it really is like, oh wait, like I know I've heard this before, but it finally makes sense now, you know?
Well, actually, I would say it's pretty easy to understand what LOA is. I mean, it's one of those concepts that we often describe as being simple but not easy, because the concept itself is easy to understand. It's a very simple concept. It's learning to apply it that can be a little bit tricky, because there are so many different ways that we learn to trip ourselves up, or maybe that we just trip ourselves up without realizing that we're doing it. But the concept is simple. You know what you focus on, you get into your life. Like attracts like. That's a very simple concept.
Yeah.
Whether or not somebody has a parent or two parents, I think anybody can grasp onto the concept, and I think anybody can really learn how to apply it. I mean, if anybody has proven that, it's my colleague Joel, who does the morning podcast on Thursdays with me, because he has helped dozens of kids, many of whom came from foster home situations. They were, perhaps their parents were, drug addicts or alcoholics or abusive or something like that. So they were taken away from their parents. And they went to the foster care system, which is often a death sentence, actually, in the long run, from what he tells me. But he's helped them get forever homes and homes with one parent, sometimes with two parents. So it's all over the place. And every single one of them, without exception, he has taught the law of attraction to. So I think the evidence is bountiful. It's abundant. I mean, there's an abundance of evidence that shows that it doesn't matter how many parents you've got. You can learn this stuff, and it's not all that difficult to learn. In fact, I would say Joel would probably argue, in some ways, the kids who went through some really trying times are probably going to be the best at it. And the reason for that is because of the trials and tribulations they went through, the struggles that they've gone through. People who struggle, in his experience, and I think it's probably true, are the ones who tend to leap the highest, who, they turn their struggles into a springboard and produce the most amazing results going on further down the road. So I would say perhaps they even have an advantage. Now, does that mean that we want everybody to go through horribly traumatic situations? Absolutely not. I'm just saying, having only one parent, I don't think that's as much of a drawback as you think it is. I think it actually can be a benefit, just depending on how you look at it.
I guess I should reframe it in that, because I agree with what you're saying. It's more to me that, for me, like, it always made sense, but with the hardship, like you're saying with the applying of the law of attraction, you have to kind of experience it working before it makes sense. Because for years it was like, no, like this is a bunch of crap. Like all of this meditation, health, all of that. Like, yeah, no, it's not. It's just another fad for pretentious people. And I was just like, I'm not buying it. And then eventually it made sense. So I'm not saying that like kids with just one parent, like, you know, they're incapable. I'm saying that they're at a disadvantage where a lot of their life's already so oppressively challenging that, and that does build character. In fact, success and happiness aren't actually very good for you in terms of building character. They essentially don't do anything. Character is built through hardship. So in that regard, that's why most of the people I hung out with through my youth were like very poor, and they had really rough lives, but they were much deeper people, much more profound people. They kind of had a more nuanced view of the world because they had been through a lot at an early age.
Sure. But
my point essentially is that they kind of can almost get jaded and lost in that, to where they grew up in this, because your world's made up of how you perceive everything. So that when they come from a place of pure hardship, the things that are a shining light are that much more like positive, right?
Right.
But for the law of attraction, that's just a difficult one. It was difficult for me, and a lot of my friends have had trouble with it. And I've gotten a few of my friends only now, because there is a big difference in age gap, just from 18 to 22. Even like 21 to 22 for me, it's been like an outrageous difference. Like, I think I've learned more in 1 year than I had in like the 4 prior years.
Good for you.
About myself. Yeah. So.
I mean, I've been learning about myself ever since I got out of college, and it's been one thing after another. So I would say good for you. That's a good thing, and you'll keep doing it, and that's great.
Yeah, and so I'm hoping that's the same for most people.
Oh, sure.
But
I mean, let's put it this way. Everybody's presented with all kinds of situations that are driven by LOA, that are driven by their thought processes. They don't always make the connection. You know, sometimes, most of us, I think, actually have to have the line drawn, so to speak. You know, here's the connection between A and B. Oh, yeah, now I see what the connection is. You know, so many of us go through life not realizing the connection between our thoughts and our experiences. However, despite that fact, when people are presented with it, depending on how they're presented with it, they can actually latch on to it fairly easily when they're younger compared to those who are older. I think it's probably in some ways a little bit more difficult when you're older. When you're younger, especially if you've been going through trials, I mean, somebody comes along and says to you, well, I don't know if you realize this, but you're a very powerful person. You are able to control everything that goes on in your life. And at first, of course, they're doubtful about that, but you talk them through the process to help them understand it. And I mean, in Joel's experience, it's every single time the kids latch on like, oh, wow, yeah, that makes total sense to me. I get it, you know? And it usually doesn't take very long. I mean, sure, there are going to be some times where you have somebody who's dealing with a really bad trauma, and you know they're having trouble just getting their mind past that trauma. So hearing about this law of attraction theory probably isn't something that they're ready to hear just yet. But if they're in any kind of receptive form at all, they're going to latch on a lot more quickly, I think. I think actually among kids, the ones who are going to have the harder time grasping this stuff are the ones who have not yet suffered a major trauma of some kind. They're just in the struggle mode of trying to make sense out of their lives after having been put through the public school process and come out at the end not really knowing what it is they want to do with their lives. Now all of a sudden they have to make a whole bunch of decisions without really having a whole lot to go on. They're the ones who I think are going to struggle the most with the concept because they're just swimming, trying to make sense out of stuff. But the ones who are dealing with traumas, they're when you deal with anything that's traumatic, that is really impactful on your life in a negative way, it sharpens your focus in a big way. And that sharpened focus, all that person needs is the knowledge, just to be presented with the fact that their focus is their greatest superpower. Once they understand that, nothing stops them. I mean, they produce the most amazing results in the world. So, again, I wouldn't want to put the excuse out there that says, it comes down to whether or not they had the right presentation, or they just didn't understand it, or whatever. I certainly would say yes, it helps to have some troubles in the background to sharpen your focus. But really, kids, I think, are in a great place to understand this stuff. Probably more so than adults. Adults have all this, this baggage they've been carrying for years, and it just keeps accumulating over time. And a lot of it is religious, a lot of it is societal, and when it adds up and it becomes habitual over time, that's where I think the greatest difficulties are that people have. Not that an adult can't make the change; the adults make the change all the time, which is a great thing. But when you don't have all that cumulative baggage, it's just going to be a little bit easier to make the change. So. If somebody is resistant, now this is the real question. If, like, you're having a conversation with somebody and they're resistant to even hearing the topic, well, yeah, that's going to happen regardless of age, right? They're going to be just people who are just not in a mindset to even consider anything else. They're already on a track of some kind. They're doing something. They're pursuing some goal. They're trying to accomplish something with their lives. They really don't want to hear another theory. They're just not in a good place for it. Or perhaps it's somebody who is they're dealing with an immediate crisis in their family, or maybe it's a crisis with friends or something like that. And the last thing that you want to hear in the midst of a crisis is this law of attraction theory. So there could be a number of different factors that are involved that will basically mean that a person's just not in a place to hear it. Just because you have to be in a place where you're ready to hear stuff. Otherwise, it's just noise. It's just background noise. And that could be what you're running into. You may be running into people who they're just not ready to even consider anything like this.
That's probably the case here. For everyone that I've talked to, I've only gotten maybe 2 friends to really latch onto it.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, and maybe it's different state by state or like location wise, because I know in California, like, most of my friends have to work like 40 to 60 hours.
Yeah,
I think one of them was doing over 70 just to be able to afford his place.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where I think a lot of people don't even get time to think because their life's so big. Like yesterday, that was one of those days for me, because for the most part I've taken some time off before I start working again, and like, it's been mostly just alone time to think. And yesterday was a day that was like go, go, go from, I woke up at 5 a.m. with like a really creepy nightmare where my dad had a heart attack and was like coughing up blood.
Oh.
And then so I got 4 hours of sleep and then was up till midnight just constantly going the whole day. And so like, I was like, wow, I literally didn't have a chance to think about anything today. But right before nighttime, I was like, okay, tomorrow, like, how can I gotta wrap all these Christmas gifts. How can I fit that in? And how can I do some stretching and some working out and work on the screenplay and blah, blah, blah. So like trying to get back on track and reframe that. But I think a lot of people like literally don't have the time because they're working so much. But that also is a choice as well. A lot of people that choose to work that much, to some degree it's a necessity. But I've seen a lot of them. It's like, yeah, you really don't have to be doing that much. Like, yeah.
Well, again, it depends what their goals are. What are they trying to? What are they trying to get to with their lives? I remember stories that my wife told me when she was in her early 20s. She moved to Mount Snow, Vermont, to be a ski bunny. Now, I should say more of a ski bum than a ski bunny, because she worked long, long hours. I don't know the exact hours, but 40 to 60 would not be out of line. She usually held 2 jobs. And then she would have whatever time off she would have, she would go skiing during the winter. And she loved it. There were things that she was dealing with. She had her own personal issues that she had to deal with on top of everything else. But she loved it. She loved the fact that even though she was working those long hours, she was getting to take the time to do the one thing that she wanted to do more than anything else, and that was to go skiing either by herself or with her friends. And she tells me many times, especially when we've gone back to visit some of her friends that are still there in Mount Snow, Vermont, she talks about how she would be skiing in the middle of the week. It'd be a weekday. She's skiing down the mountain, thinking about all of her girlfriends who are working in offices, and she doesn't have to work in an office. So the perspective, even though she had these long hours that she was working in order to just keep a roof over her head and put food on the table, she was still loving it because she was pursuing her dream. So again, it just depends on what's the perspective of the person. Now, if a person is working, like that person working 70 hours a week that you referred to, and they're hating every moment of every day of their life, yeah, that's probably a good time to start changing, changing the thought pattern. And that's probably going to be someone who's going to be at least receptive to the idea, because they're probably feeling kind of trapped in their schedule right there. But as long as they're pursuing a dream that they love, they're probably going to keep going.
Yeah, that's true.
That
is true. I don't know anyone my age that loves their work though.
No, well, not necessarily the work. Again, Louise was doing things like waiting tables, which she was not loving at all, and bartending, and just whatever kind of odd job she could come up with. But it was the skiing part that she was living for. She was living for the fact that she could go out on the ski slopes in the middle of the week and go skiing. And they also had parties on Sunday nights and that sort of thing. So there were lots of other activities too among the people who were the regulars who lived up there and worked the ski lodge and worked the the lifts and the restaurants and cafeterias and all that kind of thing. So they had kind of like their own little community. But she loved that part, and so for her it was worthwhile to put in all those hours. And she did it for like 3 or 4 years, something like that. And then she changed. And then she moved on to her next thing, Now, I also want to include one of our listeners, Deidre, who's a regular, shared a comment about what she's been doing. She said it's her plan to teach the 2 children she raised for the first part of their lives. They are 2 beautiful little girls who are in her profile pic. They're 9 and 10 years old now and no longer living with her since this time last Christmas. Oh, that's kind of sad. But she bought them a book called Your Invisible Magnet, and she hopes to be able to read to them each night by phone or FaceTime. Well, that's a good thing. Her heart is so ready to have them receive the blessing and use it to improve their young lives. Well, good for you, Deidre. Yeah, that's good. Keep putting it out there, because first of all, it'll benefit them, and second of all, it'll benefit your relationship. I mean, I wouldn't be at all surprised if you end up seeing more of them because of that. But that's great. Thank you for sharing that, too. Really, really good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, really awesome. Oh, she also said she loves hearing that Joel taught the kids the law of attraction. Yeah, I like that part too, Deidre. I mean, Joel is amazing because he has, in his life, he has adopted 3 boys, one of whom is currently living with him. He has found forever homes for 37 boys, and these were kids who the system had decided they were the kinds of kids you couldn't find homes for. They were the biggest troublemakers. They were the ones that always got the worst reports from the foster parents. They were the ones that were always shuffled around in the system. And as far as he was concerned, they were the ones most at risk, because he was telling me one day about the statistics associated with what happens when a kid passes through the foster care system without ever being adopted. And they turn 18, and the odds are overwhelming that they're either going to be in jail or dead within the next 5 years. It's just terrifying how bad the odds are for somebody who goes through the foster care system without being adopted. So when you hear how he found all those homes for those kids, and plus he's done a lot of work with other kids, not necessarily finding them homes, but just helping them cope with life and understand LOA and learn how to take control of their lives and so forth. So the number of kids he's helped is actually far in excess of those 37 plus 3. It's probably well into the hundreds. And just an amazing, amazing life he's been leading. And he's loving every minute of it. That's the best part. He absolutely loves every minute of it. He reinforced that during this morning's podcast, how much he's enjoying what he's doing. But I agree with you, Deidre. He's quite a guy. He's amazing. So, I'm not sure where I think I kind of took you off track. So where were we going with what you were talking about?
I don't know, man. I have no idea.
Oh, that's all right.
That's how my life feels every day. That's why it's the how question, not the why question.
Well, why don't we go to the what question? Because the what question is, what do you want? Right? Because that's where you have to start. You have to start with deciding, what do you want to have happen in your life? What do you want to attract into your life? How do you want your life to what kind of path do you want to be on? That kind of thing. Have you given that question any thought? Because the how question really is That's putting the cart before the horse. You got to ask the what question first.
Hmm. That's it. Well, yeah. I mean, I definitely love filmmaking. That's the one. The one that I learned was that
Okay.
stand-up comedy, the open mic scene is absolutely not very fun at all. In fact, it's basically like Alcoholics Anonymous, except no one's there to support you.
Okay. Yes, I can see that. It's a rough field. There's no doubt about that. Very rough field.
It's
You
like
got to really
rough
love it.
and toxic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, how do I keep doing stand-up comedy, but not do the open mics 5 days a week? And the answer for that so far has been, we'll just work on it at home and then find weird one-off shows. Like I'm performing at an art gallery that one of my mom's friends, she basically runs it. They'll be performing like a poetry open mic there, which is going to be really weird.
Okay.
There's going to be a bunch of people there for poetry. Then I'm going to go up there and do a mostly clean set. So, like that kind of, convergence or like that side of the what. The other what would be like filmmaking, and that's a tough one because as far as I can tell, it's one of those things where you really just have to get experience and work on it for years before anyone will respect you. And so that's kind of where I'm at now, just doing as many projects as possible.
Mm-hmm.
So those are like the two immediate goals. And then basically I'll be starting work next month and just saving. I mean, I've always been able to handle money stuff well, so I'm just going to start focusing on each goal as it comes, getting, a camera at some point, and then after that, take it from there.
Good.
So
Good.
I'm not.
So what does it look?
Yeah,
what does it look like, say, a year from now in your imagination? Not as a goal to be set, but this is just the dreaming stage. This is just playing, the 5-year-old playing fireman, right? So if you imagine filmmaking a year from now, what does that look like to you?
Ideally, out of several more short films done by the end of this year.
Okay.
I'll know some more people to work with. I've worked with like a semi-professional team on one occasion, but it was in set design, which was interesting. So finding more people to work with. And then furthermore, the stuff that I like to film is really odd and bizarre. So it's one of those things where I remember one guy was he's like, I like your stuff, but honestly, I'm too nervous to work on those kind of projects, like to associate my name with those kind of projects. And I'm like, that's fine. Like you don't have to board this journey, but you can certainly watch us leave. And so, yeah, a year from now, here's something interesting I also figured out with the how. Because whenever I get like manically inspired, which is not all the time, but it'll be like, I'll just feel like a rampage of creativity.
Those are good.
And once that like switch from the why to how finally happened, I had like a million ideas and I was just writing everything down.
So tell me about the how part, because how is usually a place to trip yourself up, but you're making it sound like it's a creative place. So tell me about that.
Well, and it really, you could change the words, but for me, it's like, instead of like, why do I always go to bed at different times? Like, why am I depressed often? Why am I this and that? Why do I this? Instead, it's like, how can I improve my sleep schedule?
Oh.
How can I fit yoga into my day? How can I focus on this one screenplay? Because I've got like 10 screenplays roughly that I want to write, that I have like, that aren't just a single idea, but that have like more than, because I have a whole file of like, one sentence to a paragraph film ideas. But now it's the idea that I finally figured out, and this, you're listening, and this doesn't just apply to creative works, but aligning, I think we've talked about it before, because it works for the law of attraction too, aligning all the aspects of your life with your goal. So the screenplay that I've been trying to write, I've thought about it for like 1 to 2 years. It's been kind of lingering in the back of my head, and it's intimidating because the screenplays I've written before have like 3 to 5 characters, and they're pretty small, and they're written with the intention that I could shoot them on a budget that I can afford. So like I wrote a film that I could make in the area I grew up with money that I could raise myself.
Okay.
But for this new one, I'm like, okay, I want to push the boundaries and try something that's totally out of like anything I've ever done. Like I'm not sure that I'll be able to easily do this.
Good.
But I want to do it.
Yeah.
But
what does that look like?
Intimidating.
What does that look like, though? Forget the intimidation for a moment. What does that look like?
In terms of what?
You want to do. You weren't really specific about what it is you want to do. You just said it was pressing past the boundaries of what you felt like you could accomplish. So it sounded like you were going beyond budgetary limits, and you were going beyond possibilities that you could imagine right now. So instead of trying to map it out, just tell me, what does it look like when you somehow get there? What is that vision that you're seeing right now look like?
It's a 3-hour film, so it's enormous.
Okay.
It's got over 10 characters, which is more than anything I've ever worked with before.
Okay.
So that's one of the intimidating factors, right? So but forgetting about that, like if there's 10 characters.
Yeah, just forget the intimidation part. We don't even care about that right now. This is just pure dreaming.
It is. Most of the film is shot outdoors. Pretty much the entire film is shot in the Wild West kind of areas, and kind of in a dreary time. Mostly older men. So we're talking 1860s to 1880s. So mostly a whole bunch of like grizzled old white guys from like the Midwest. Traveling on this journey, and things are getting progressively more and more awful. And there's a very heavy horror vibe and a very heavy sci-fi vibe, but still retaining all of the values of a Western film.
Okay.
And so that's the project at its core.
And when this project gets made, now, we're just in dreaming mode again. We're not trying to figure out how to get there. This is just dreaming mode. But in dreaming mode, what happens after you make the movie? Is it published? Do people get to see the movie? What happens?
Yeah. Well, the thing, I saw The Hateful Eight, Quentin Tarantino's last film.
Okay.
He had this roadshow tour, which is where you'd go to the theater and it'd be like the not like the mainstream movie theaters, but the more like niche theaters or whatever, because it was a 70 millimeter road show. So you watched it on a 70 millimeter screen, and they handed you like a packet with like some info and pictures of the film, and there was like a traditional intermission. And to me, that was just such a fun, amazing film experience compared to just, you pay some money, you go buy some popcorn, and you sit down, and then you leave. Instead, it was interactive. There was an intermission. Everyone was there just for this. The whole thing was completely sold out. Everyone was there because they loved, Quentin Tarantino and his films. And so I want to create that same thing where it's this just amazing film that all of these people go to, and even if they don't like that genre, even if they don't like the kind of content, they'd appreciate just the pure kind of artistic approach to the whole thing, and that it's not trying to be some product to sell. Rather than it being just this experience that people can go out and be like, oh my gosh, like that was very unique. It made me feel and think certain ways that, that I haven't really considered as much. That would be kind of what I love making people think.
What does that feel like? If you imagine that scene that you just played out for me, where you have this kind of movie going experience and people are going to it, how does that scene feel, and how many people are involved in seeing it, and what makes it really feel successful to you? What are the criteria that make it successful from your perspective?
If I was in the theater and everyone was engaged and into the film, and because I know for me, I'm an empath, which essentially means that I pick up on everyone else's emotions when I'm in the room. Okay,
so how does that room feel? Describe how that room feels.
So This room feels very good. And that was the feeling that I got when I saw the Hateful Eight. So the same thing, where you can feel that everyone is there and that they're enjoying it, or at least appreciating it, and that they're there. Like they're in the film. They're not they're no longer in the theater. They're in the film and watching and seeing all of this transpire. And to me, that is like the most beautiful movie experience, to be in the film.
So total suspension of disbelief. They're just married to this life that they're in right now for this short period of time.
Yes.
Okay. And what does that feel like to you? You see this going on. You see these people who are so absorbed in the film. What's that experience like for you?
Very fulfilling. A feeling of happiness to basically to give other people that experience, I suppose.
Okay. Talk more about it. Tell what is it that is so fulfilling? Describe it. Be as detailed as you can about it.
I'd say it's probably a mix between like personal validation and then also the fact that, like, for me, I have really high standards for film, and there's not many I like. So to be able to provide something to people where they're like, yes, like I loved that. That was amazing. That was exactly what I wanted out of what was made. Like, what was made was exactly what I expected it to be.
Mm-hmm.
You know, without knowing at the same time, where it's still totally mysterious. You go in not really knowing, but being like, oh my gosh, that was precisely what I wanted out of this. And yeah, does that kind of...
Yeah, absolutely. If you, in your mind, are you seeing this whole thing happening where you actually get to enjoy the audience's reaction each time?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I suppose it would feel a lot different than, like, say,
Yeah.
stand-up comedy, but the kind of, the kind of thing where you're there in the room, and then maybe like I love Q&A sections, especially for like films, books, things like that, just because there are plenty of artists who won't talk about their work,
Mm-hmm.
and so the ones that do, it's like, it's kind of, I mean, that's why, like, I left all my stand-up comedy videos on YouTube, even from when I first started out, because I was thinking, like, one day I'm gonna be dead. Like, I could pull this down now, because you could argue, oh, the beginning ones are like, they're not very good. Like, I wasn't. I was above average when I started, just because my family's funny, and so I'd like learned to be funny my whole life basically. So I've always kind of been a comedian in that regard. But when I actually started, it was like, okay, like I had some good jokes, but like my timing and delivery was like it's not where it's at now. And so kind of like leaving, like I think it's cool to leave as much information as possible to future generations, because so many amazing people die. And it's like, I wish I knew, like, what he had, how did he do that? How did he accomplish this? Like, I wish I could have asked him this one question. And so I'm like, here, like, even if, like, for hundreds of years, no one cares about any of the work I've ever created, like, the few people that do, because I do have a few people that are like they follow all the stuff that I put out.
Good.
And like, it means that much to them, and just having that like relationship with the followers who are like, oh, hey, what about this? And kind of like I would like to leave a legacy where there's so much information about my life that anyone that would want to know could know everything they could, as not, I guess, because a lot of people kind of have this like egotistical approach to it. But for me, it's like I wish I knew more about all the people that are my inspirations. So my goal is to leave as much information to future generations, future young artists, future kids, that they don't have as many people to look up to. And I want to be like, here, like, this is what I did. Yeah. Here's how I got through this. Here's how I got through depression. How did I focus on my art with all this hardship going on?
Very
and that's
good.
Kind of like, even if the art, I don't remember if you and I talked about this, but I finally figured out one idea to take off a lot of pressure from being an artist, and it's just assume that after you're dead, you're going to be regarded as an artistic genius like Shakespeare. Like, everything you've done in your life it's perfect in its own way, and it all led you to where you're at. And after you die, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, so-and-so he's an artistic genius. But in his time, artists never, you're only famous after you're dead. So approaching it like that, because my other friend, he and I have the same problem. We've got the same personality type and everything. So a lot of our problems line up. And I told him that, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense." Like, it takes, because we're both like perfectionists, and that takes off so much of the pressure where it's like, oh, like just assume that everything you're doing is on the right track, and like you can always add more or subtract and change things around, but just like these are all steps forward. And it can be challenging because it can feel like you're taking steps forward, but towards the wrong direction. But it's never the wrong direction. If you even steps backwards are steps forward if you learn not to step backwards again. You know, it's like a big puzzle or a minefield.
Sure. Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you described beautifully for me and for our audience. And by the way, Deidre wants me to recognize some in the audience. So Johnny P, thank you for joining us. We're really glad that you made it to the podcast, and keep tuning in because the conversations get pretty darn interesting and go off in all kinds of interesting directions. Today we're helping Drew do some attracting and figure out how to attract it in the way that's going to be most effective for him. But Drew, you described beautifully this little scene, this little vignette, as Cindy and I call them, of what it's like to watch people watching your movie that has been completed in the theater, and then you interacting with them after the fact, learning what the experience was like for them. And then you also tacked on this additional piece of you accumulate all this knowledge over time, and you're sharing it and leaving it behind for future generations long after you're gone. But especially that first part of the vignette, that is the perfect vignette to have. It's the perfect little... It's like a little movie you created of your movie. It's the movie that you create in your mind of what your movie's going to be like in a year from now. And that little movie you created in your mind, that's the one you want to keep replaying. And you want it to be tied in with a couple of things. First, you want to tie it in with the excitement level that you felt. Because I could hear the excitement in your voice as you're describing what it's like to watch your viewers watching your movie. You were excited by that, and you want to keep emphasizing that excitement as you play the little movie in your head about what's going to happen a year from now. And if you keep doing that every day, Neville Goddard recommends doing it just before bed. That's a good time to do it, but I would do it periodically throughout the day. I would do it first thing in the morning. I would do it last thing before you go to sleep, and I would do it a few other times during the day. Just play that movie in your mind over and over again, and each time that you play it, keep playing it until you feel that feeling of excitement build up. It can take a little while, but you're kind of taking advantage of the way the law of attraction works, because it's like Abraham teaches, right? If you spend at least 17 seconds focused on a thought, the law of attraction will deliver another thought to you. And do that another time, another time, another time. Now you've focused 68 seconds. Now you're going to actually start to manifest something. Well, if you do the same approach with the feeling of it, by just putting 17 seconds and then 34 and then 68 seconds and more time in every single day, you'll build that feeling up so that each time that you play that little movie in your head, the movie of people watching your movie, as you do that, you're going to turn it into a law of attraction machine. So you won't have to worry about the house. That's the one thing you actually don't want to do. You don't want to spend any time or energy or effort on figuring out how you're going to get there a year from now. Where the money is going to come from, where the actors are going to come from, where the equipment is going to come from, where the crew is going to come from. You don't even think about that part. All you do every single day is play that little movie of you watching people watch your movie. And you get excited about it every single day. And I promise you, if you do that faithfully, amazing things will happen, and all of a sudden it'll all start to come together, and you'll find yourself somewhere during this year to getting into a place where you can start making that movie. It will work out that way. Where we tend to trip up is when we figure out we're the ones who have to make it happen. So we're the ones who have to figure out the hows. That's why Mike Dooley from The Secret calls it the horrible hows. They truly are horrible, because what we end up doing is constantly planning and remincing and mince-meeting the plans. And then the plan isn't quite right, so we do it again And then we talk to somebody else, and they shoot down half the plan, so we rebuild that half over here. And we're constantly doing this planning thing. And we never actually get to the point where we make the movie. You see what I mean?
That was the past 2 years. I
Yeah.
really appreciate everything you just said.
Yeah, so you now know that following the hows is not the way to go. The way to go is to follow the dream. Just it's not up to you to figure out how the dream is going to manifest. That's up to source energy. That's up to the universe. That's up to God. I don't care how you want to label it. That's not your job. Your job is to keep replaying that mental movie of you watching people watching your movie. And what it's like after they watched the movie and you've talked to them and they were enjoying it and you're so excited by their excitement. That's the little movie you have to keep playing over and over again in your head. And you got to feel it every single time. The feeling is like the most critical part of it, because when you feel it, you are in that little movie you just created. You are part of it. As opposed to being the person, the man behind the curtain who's just kind of looking from afar at what these people are doing. When you put yourself into the movie, you make it that much more powerful for you to experience it in your real life. In Neville Goddard's words, you harden the experience into reality. When you look at it as an observer, like the man behind the curtain kind of a thing, it makes it much harder to harden it into reality. You have to. There's going to be more doubt that crops up. There's going to be more reasons to believe that it's not going to work out, and then you start losing interest in playing the video, and then the whole thing just kind of dies a sad death. So make sure you continue that part of you being an active participant in that little movie of you watching everybody else watch the movie. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I really like. Yeah, that I really enjoyed that exercise. You did a very good job, and it makes sense now.
Yeah, and do it with the same enthusiasm that you described to us today when you were telling us what it was like. That enthusiasm, and keep building that enthusiasm. Don't just settle for that, because ultimately, what you want to do is you want to make it so exciting every time you play that little video in your mind that it is indistinguishable from reality in your mind. And when it is indistinguishable from reality, it will be reality.
I gotta write that down. Always write down everything. Yeah, that is really profound.
It took me a long time to understand that process. But that process, what I just described to you, is what I have accumulated. You talked about leaving your knowledge behind for others. That's the knowledge I've accumulated over the last 10 years. 10 plus years, 11 years now. If I condense it all down to one thing, that's it. That's how you use the law of attraction as a deliberate creator most successfully. If we can do those things, we win. And win, and win, and win, and win. We live the abundant life that we're looking for.
That's a lot to think about, applying it to everything else. I'm gonna have to run through that.
Well, don't try it. Don't go that far out yet. Just do this one vignette for a little bit, and once it starts to feel comfortable that yes, I'm doing this every single day. I'm doing it many times during a day. I'm getting excited every time I'm playing this little movie, and I'm playing the whole movie through. I'm doing it for 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes at a time, whatever it is, and I'm doing it and doing it and doing it. Once you've done that for a while, then consider putting it into other areas of life and creating other little vignettes for yourself. But give yourself the experience of doing one successfully. And by successfully, I don't mean that you've manifested it. I mean successfully in that you have stuck to the daily habit. You built the daily habit of running through the video every day. Do that first. Then start trying to apply it in other areas of your life. And you won't have to wait real long. But just give yourself a chance to establish the habit is what I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, gosh. Yeah, this is exciting. All of this is I guess, the core idea of helping young people that we talked about earlier, I'd say. Mm-hmm. A lot of this stuff takes a while to click. But once it does, it's like, it is all good now. Like, it makes sense.
And thank you, Deidre. I've been reading your comments. I appreciate that. And I'm glad that I was able to reach out to your friend. I hope she's enjoying it. I hope she's getting something out of it. Because that's why we do this. We do this to share it. We're creating a movie here. You know that?
We are, yeah.
We
We're creating
really
the
are.
future.
Yeah. I mean, we're actually creating a movie right now, and we're creating a movie about the future. We're doing both because this is actually being recorded to video. So we are actually creating a movie, but we're also creating a movie of what's going to come.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's like overwhelming at first, all these revelations lately. But it's like a good overwhelming, kind of like I guess like after Christmas when I was a kid getting a whole bunch of different gifts, and it's like, oh my God, what do I start with?
Well, how appropriate, since Christmas is coming up on Tuesday. What better time to have a feeling of Christmas, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's the wealth of knowledge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Deidre's cheering us on in the background. She's typing all those comments. Yes, yes, awesome. All right.
Yeah, gosh, I'm like stunned. I don't even know where to.
Well, you can see already, I kind of derailed what your old thought was. You probably are having trouble even remembering what your old thought train was. Before, you were trying to map things out. You're trying to figure out, how do I get from point A to point B? And you were trying to figure out what little tiny steps you could take to get there. And what I did is I bypassed all of that, took you right to the end point, asked you to dream about that end point, and then asked you to focus on that dream and keep focusing on that dream over and over again. Bypassing all that stuff about how the heck you're going to get there. Because that experience of trying to figure out how you're going to get there is what will drag you down every time. It's exhausting. It's debilitating.
Yeah.
And I say that as an expert who has spent many years in exactly that space, trying to figure out how to make everything work from point A to point B. It will just wear you out over time. It'll just tear you down. But when you learn, and I'm still learning it too, when you learn to reframe everything in terms of where you want to be and what that looks like, well, first of all, it's a hell of a lot easier. Second of all, it's a hell of a lot more exciting because now you're focusing on what you're dreaming about, the reason why you were even doing it in the first place. I mean, you had initially at some point you had a motivation to do filmmaking, and that motivation wasn't because you figured, well, yeah, I could just kind of do that job. And it wasn't because, well, filmmaking is worthwhile. Nothing like that. You had an enthusiasm. That's why you wanted to get into filmmaking. Well, doing this process recaptures that enthusiasm. That enthusiasm is what's going to get you there in the long run anyway. So, get enthusiastic.
I really like that. Yeah. So then is it the just sitting down every day and working on it and just kind of feeling that end result, and that'll channel into the piece as it kind of builds, or what do you think?
Yeah, oh yeah, and there's nothing wrong with just doing what you can do. I love the approach that you talked about earlier about just doing every little project you can think of along the way. As it comes along, when an opportunity comes, you just jump on it. You say, yeah, okay, I'll do that. That's good. But you don't make that the only way you're going to get there. You want to make sure that your dreaming is how you're going to get there. This is you learning your craft in the meantime. But the dreaming is how you're going to actually get there.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that's what's been I guess, to some degree, the struggle, is that balance between like building the craft and having actual, results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and everybody experiences that. Everybody knows that because we've all been there. That's what we're taught to do. Our societies teach us to do that. Right? Put your nose to the grindstone. Work hard. Keep grinding away, and success will come your way. And then success doesn't come, and we wonder, what's wrong with the formula? Well, now we know what's wrong with the formula. The formula doesn't take into account the one thing that's the most important part of all, the dream.
Yeah, that's really profound. Yeah, there's so many. That's the whole the whole open mic scene for comedy is the grind scene. Everyone's like, yeah, it's that grind, just keep doing it and you'll make it. And I'm like, this is not how it works. I don't know why anyone thinks that. Like, you don't just go perform to 3 drunkards in like a low lit room 5 days a week and magically you're like, on tour.
And by the way, you're not the only one who's experiencing the mental breakthrough here, because Deidre says, I wish you could see me grinning, and Dave says, thank you for helping me to understand. So you're sharing this experience with others. Other people are vicariously living it along with you.
Well, I relate, and I hope you're making sense of all this because it comes slowly. Like I said, it's been like 2 years of kind of this like to some degree like a slog from hell, and then the past 6 months of like so having so much alone time has been great because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna take time off after school
Mm-hmm.
and kind of figure out my life, sort out my health problems. Oh yeah, the health problem stuff's ridiculous too, though. My stomach problems, I keep learning more and more things are that even in the supplements there's an ingredient that is a trigger for my problems. So I didn't even realize that until like a week ago, and I'm like, oh my god, like even the supplements that were supposed to help me are making things worse. And so constantly like examining aspects of life, and instead of like, why is this always so bad, be like, how can I make it better? How can I do this? And then applying that with your the whole, I don't know what the actual term for it would be, but imagining the dream of like, oh, like I've fixed all my stomach problems, I feel great, I can go outdoors now and all that. So I guess yeah.
Yeah, imagining the dream is a good way to describe it. Abraham Hicks calls it deliberate creation. That's what deliberate creation truly is. Deliberate creation is doing all the work in your mind of what it's going to look like and then letting the universe take care of it for you. That's deliberate creation. But, imagining the dream, that's a good way of describing it. I like that equally well. Very good. And we don't have a lot of time to be able to do the other part. And you even mentioned it gets a little confusing when you try to apply it to other stuff. But I'll just kind of give you a little tease to think about. And that is, you just mentioned all the health issues you were dealing with. And as so often happens when we talk about health issues, we talk about all the things that are going wrong and how you're getting down to the fine details of things that are going wrong. This is another place where imagining the dream or deliberate creation can be really useful, because what you really want to do is imagine yourself in that healthy place and create that dream in your mind. What does that healthy place feel and look like and experience? What does that seem like when you're there? What does it taste like? What does it look like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? All of it, every single sense involved. Just like you were doing with the theater, with the the little movie you made of watching people watch your movie.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing applies here. You create the little movie about what happens. What's it like immediately after you achieve health again? What does that feel like? What does that look like? What is it? You're there. You're part of it. You're experiencing the health. What does that feel like? That's the movie you got to create, and you got to use that movie as the thing to think about instead of all the things that are going wrong. So I don't say that to you to say go do that yet. I want you to spend more time this coming week focusing on that first vignette, the one about watching people watching your movie. But once you've gotten used to that for a bit, then you can apply the same process to your health situation. That's what I'm trying to tease you with. The idea that, yes, you can transfer this over to the health situation as well, and you can get equally good results there.
Okay, that's awesome. I like all of that. And I actually have something to add to it. This was one of the other revelations I had that I kind of briefly mentioned before. And hopefully the viewers, you might relate to this as well. So one of the things I realized was that everything I consume in my life affects my influence.
Mm-hmm.
And so for this screenplay, it's a Western and it's horror. So I'm like, how can I align every influence to inspire me to help write this, to get towards that dream state?
Okay.
And so I wrote down a list of all of the films that I have seen or that I'd like to see that I think would influence it. Same with all of the books, and then music, and then now I guess figuring out some life experience stuff. But aligning, because instead I was reading like this comic book, I was playing like Spider-Man game, and so if I'm trying to write this Western horror, now I have like Spider-Man as an influence, and that's not really going to be the proper influence.
All right.
And so even if like I just like, I wanted to go play Spider-Man, but it's like, well, I'm trying to focus on this screenplay. So what can I play that'll like inspire and get these vibes going? And so that's kind of something that I haven't totally worked out yet, but it's worth considering of, once again, I guess kind of compartmentalizing the different aspects of life and aligning them more with those goals.
That's a very key piece to deliberate creation, because deliberate creation is about being very selective of what you're focusing on. And that includes your influences. So if your influences include Spider-Man, and Spider-Man doesn't match up with the thing that you're really trying to focus on, you got to change the influence leading up to that to something that does serve you with the dream that you're trying to create. So I agree with you completely. I think you're on the right track there. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah. And that's and then and then setting aside time for just pure random fun. That would be when I'd play Spider-Man. It's like,
absolutely.
I'm like, you know what? Like tonight, I'm just gonna do whatever and have fun and have no goals in mind. Like just be in the moment. Then I'd go play it, and I'm sure it'll still have some influence, but hopefully channel it into something else. And of course, it's the same for all media and also the people you see in your life. And that's a weird one to think about, is how the people you're around influence you. I had a bunch of toxic people around me for a while, and it was like, oh God, like I'm becoming a toxic garbage person. I need to like run away from this.
Well, what's going to be really interesting is as you develop this new skill that we're helping you to develop, you're going to find that different people are going to be around you. You're going to be influencing them. And in the process, you're going to influence them into having the ones near you that you want to be near you, and the ones who don't fit what you're trying to do at all, the toxic ones, they're just going to disappear.
It's interesting you mentioned that. That's actually what's been happening.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm super introverted, so it's on a small scale, of course, but I'm sure it'll be expanding with time.
It will, no doubt about it. And unfortunately, speaking of time, we're out of it, but this has been great. Thank you very much for being the guinea pig, so to speak, and letting us work on your stuff. But it's been very worthwhile, and it sounds like you've gotten something good out of it too.
Yes, yeah, always. Every time at the end, I feel inspired, and hopefully the listeners, learn something about yourselves, or at least feel related to. So
very good.
Always enjoy it.
All right. Well, then have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next week. And we hope that all of our listeners will come back and join us next time as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.